I was a kid, I grew up in a house with a wood stove. We didn't have any other heat in the house. It was a wood stove, so we all did that. And we eventually inherited a window unit air conditioner. It was an old one that we had, and it was in the living room too. Like I remember when it would get really hot or really cold, putting up blankets to block off the living room, and we'd all just stay in the living room because it was too hot, too cold. But that was fine. It worked out. Lived through it. No big deal. A lot of y'all had that. But the thing about a wood stove, if you think about it, it's kind of weird to just have a fire in your house, right? Like you take the wood stove part of it out, like we just build a fire in the house and hope it works out. It's kind of a wild thing to do, but we would do that. And it's a pretty good source of heat. I remember right after my parents got divorced, it got really cold, and Mom said, all right, you need to build a fire. I'm like 11. I didn't know what I was doing, so I built a fire. And the thermometer said 95 at one point, and we were opening the windows and had fans. It's 30 degrees outside, and it works. It works. But having a fire in your house is dangerous, and so the thing is, when my aunt and uncle built that house, and then my dad and mom took over. But when they built that house, my grandmother built the hearth and the chimney for it. Now, this lady, she was about this tall, and she was about this big around, that big around. But she would have loved YouTube. She was a DIYer before it was really a thing. Like she learned cosmetology through a correspondence course, and she taught herself how to do furniture upholstery by reading a book. Taught herself stonemasonry, and that was the last project that she did before she got to where she just couldn't really do it anymore. But she did stonemasonry, taught herself that, and built this beautiful hearth. And if you don't know what the hearth is, it's the rock or the metal that's underneath the wood stove and around the wood stove to keep it from burning the house down. That's what it is. And she also built the chimney. And I would have loved to see this little bitty woman out on a ladder with these, and she wasn't like bricks. She would get the rocks out of the field that were this big, and she was building this stuff. But she did it to protect her family, to keep her family safe. You got a fire in the house, don't want it to burn down. So we build a hearth, build a good chimney, we're good to go. And she did a good job. Like the house never caught on fire from the wood stove. And the thing a lot of people don't know is that if your house catches on fire because of a wood stove, it's almost never because of the wood stove, right? Because the fire in the house is dangerous. So we build a hearth, you put up some metal, you put in some concrete, you do whatever to protect yourself from the box. But that's good, that you should do that. But because of that, that's not where the house catches on fire. Where the house catches on fire is on the roof. And what happens is during the summer, you don't use the wood stove, right? It's too hot. Not using the wood stove. You got the window unit air conditioner running, trying to cool off the whole house. So in the spring and in the summer and the fall, birds, squirrels like to build nests in the top of chimneys. They'll build them right in the top of chimney. And if you don't clean it out, if you don't have a chimney sweep come in, or if you're a redneck like we were, you don't take a chain and just do this on the inside of it, then stuff builds up in the chimney. And what happens is you got a cold night, you got a hot fire, the embers all go up and they catch that nest on fire. And then the chimney effect, the wind from the chimney effect will pick up sometimes a whole nest or sticks or embers or whatever, and it'll take it and it'll land on the roof. Or it'll get sucked up into the vents, into the attic, or go up against some rotten eaves or something like that. And it sets the house on fire nowhere near where you're protecting. You've done all this work to build a hearth. You've done all this work to build a chimney to protect from the actual fire, but you don't do anything about the chimney. And now the house is on fire from somewhere that you didn't expect. And it's this idea that it's frustrating because you do all this work to protect yourself, but there's one thing that you don't think is that big of a deal. You don't take care of chimney maintenance. And now all of a sudden your house is on fire from something you didn't even consider. We're going through the book of James. And in James, he talks about, in James chapter 3, he talks about an issue like this. And he even uses the same metaphor of fire. He talks about this issue, like you're guarding against sexual sin so it doesn't destroy your life. It's a good thing to do. You have auditing procedures at work, and we have double signer accounts here at the church to make sure that you don't have an opportunity to steal money. You're not tempted to steal money. And almost none of us are bringing idols into our house that we have to worship. We're not worried about that. We're not bringing in. We protect ourselves from what we think is the real danger. Meanwhile, we have other sins that we're allowing to just go crazy, and they're throwing embers on the roof, and our roof is going to catch on fire. The attic is going to catch on fire. Our house is going to burn down, not because of the sins that we're protecting against, but because of the sins that we don't think are a big deal. And that's what James deals with in James chapter 3. And let's just read through and we'll talk about it. Starting in James chapter 3, starting in verse 1 and 2. It says, "Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways. And if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body." And James starts off with this idea, just before we get into the actual sin. He says this: you will be judged for your actions. You will be judged for your actions. And we want to be clear about this, okay? There's two kinds of judgment. There's the judgment about whether you're guilty and go to heaven or hell, and there's the judgment about what you did. And here's how it works. You are a sinner. The punishment for sin is hell and death. You cannot be good enough to outrun that. You can't do enough to outrun it. It doesn't matter how many puppies you adopt. If you murdered somebody, you're still a murderer no matter how many puppies you adopt, right? There's not enough good in the world that you can do to overcome the bad that you've done. You are guilty. The punishment for that guilt is hell and death forever. And if you are judged on your actions, when it comes to your eternal fate, you will be found guilty, you will go to hell. But Jesus came to give us an opportunity to be judged on something different. Instead of being judged based on our guilt or innocence, we're judged based on our faith in Him. And if we've trusted in Jesus, we've said, I can't be good enough on my own. He has to be good enough for me. I have to call on the sacrifice of Jesus in my place. Then that first judgment, even though we're guilty, we're not sentenced to the punishment for that because He's taken the punishment for that. Okay? I want to be clear about that. But once that's happened, like if you're found guilty about that, you go to hell, there's no reason to judge you for anything else. We're done. That's all good. But once you've been found not innocent, but you've been cleared from that because of the sacrifice of Jesus, you're still held accountable for your actions. It's not the same consequences, but you are still held accountable for that. You are still judged for that. And what James says here is like leaning into that idea that you will be held accountable for your actions. But he uses this idea of a teacher to show that there are different levels or there's different strictness of judgment that you'll face based on your position in the room, right? He says specifically, not many of you should become teachers, brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. And what they had is what happens in a lot of churches, or a lot of organizations at all. It's people want to be at the top, right? And at the church, it seems like the people at the top are the teachers. So people want to be in charge. So people want to get this job of teacher. They want to have this thing. They want to have the influence. They want to have the leadership. Sometimes they want to have power. That's dangerous, but that's what they want to have. They want to have that power. And he said, look, a lot of you are aspiring to this without understanding that the more authority you have in the room, the more influence you have in the room, the more strictly you will be judged. And you can argue with me about this. I don't think James is saying, and Evan asked me to make this point, but I don't think James is saying here, don't be teachers, nobody be a teacher because you're going to be judged. I think his point is you should stop taking this so lightly and understand that you're going to be judged and you're going to be judged more strictly. So if you aspire to this, understand that you're going to be held accountable. And some of you are not ready. If you get judged and you get held accountable for the way that you're behaving right now, doesn't matter how good you teach, God's going to come down on you for that. Some of you are not ready for that. He's like, don't tell people not to be small group leaders because we really need small group leaders. That's not the point. The point is not, don't be a teacher. The point is, take it seriously, because the more influence, the more authority that you have in the room, the more strictly you'll be judged. And he says specifically, the thing that I want to talk to you about is not just your sexual sin, not just idolatry, not just financial sin, but the way that you talk. You will be judged not just for the wood stove. You're not going to be charged for the fire in your house. You're not just going to be judged for the big things that we think of, but even your words will be held to account. The way that you influence, the way that you talk to people. Now, let's just deal with the example right off the bat here. I don't know that I'm prepared for it, but I know that I will be judged more strictly than you, more harshly than you, for my behavior because I'm responsible for you. I know that. And I know that the other people that I allow to teach in this church, that they teach under the umbrella of my authority, they're my responsibility. I'm held accountable for that. I know that. And that's a consequence that I'm going to face. I'm a teacher. This is what I get. This is part of the job. And because of that, I have to be strict about who's allowed to teach, who's allowed to be an authority, who can't do that. And there's some things that are the church's decision, and there's some things that are mine. And I know that I will answer for that. And some of you are like, well, I'm really glad I'm not a teacher because I don't want to be held more accountable from that. I don't want to be held to that stricter standard. I don't really want to be either, but this is what God's called me to. This is what I get. Some of you are saying, like, I'm really glad I'm not a teacher because I don't want to be held to that account. But let's step away from the example of just being a teacher for a minute and of an official position of a pastor, a small group leader, kids teacher, whatever it is. Let's step away from the official position and just talk about influence and teaching that you do in your own life. If you have kids, you are a teacher. You may want to outsource that all to somebody else. You may say, let the public schools take care of all that. I'm not going to teach these kids. Let somebody else do it. You can do that, right? But you're still responsible for their behavior. You still set the tone for how they live. You still set the tone by your words and by your actions for what they will think a Christian lives like. They will look at how you live and they will say, this is the baseline. Where it is. And it's interesting to me to have conversations with people who think their family were really active in church involved Christians, to talk to people that coming into college and they're like, yeah, we were really involved. We were, our faith, it was all about our faith. And then they show up and it's like, oh, you want me to come to church every Sunday? I didn't know people went every Sunday. Like, oh, you want me to serve? You want me to do stuff? I didn't know. I didn't know that they've got this baseline understanding. They think their parents are really active, really involved, really there. And then they find out, like, oh no, there's a whole other level because their parents are the ones that set the standard for them. And you, if you're a parent, you're your kid's primary teacher about all things, including Jesus. And you will be held accountable for what you teach them and how you teach them. You're responsible for that. So, well, I don't have any kids, or my kids are grown, or whatever. Okay. If you go to work, or you've got a group of friends, you may not be the most advanced theologian in this room. You may not be the most mature Christian in this room, but there's a good chance that you're one of the most advanced, mature Christians at your workplace. There may be a good chance that you are the closest that they will ever get to a Bible teacher to teach them anything. And in that room where you carry influence, where you're the teacher, where you're there, you may not have asked for that, but you are that representative of Jesus, you will be judged more strictly for how you behave, how you do things, how you represent Jesus, and how you talk in that place. And we can give a bunch of examples. We can talk about school. We can talk about friend groups. We can talk about work. We can talk about neighbors. We can talk about all those places. But I don't think I need to beat this point to death. You will be held accountable. The more influence you have in the situation, the more that you will be held accountable. And that is not just on the big sins. It's not just on the fire in your house. All the way down to your words, the way you talk. You will be held accountable. And that's not a thing of saying, oh, I want to scare you. Well, I want to live in guilt. I want to live in fear. That's not it. James says, you have to take this seriously because God is merciful. God is gracious. But if you don't take it seriously, if you're like, hey, this doesn't matter to me, I don't care how this goes. I'm not going to put any effort into it. How much mercy and grace do you think you're going to receive in this? So let's start here. If you're a teacher in this church, that is, that you get to get up, I want to say pulpit, but we got rid of that thing. You want to get up on this stage and you want to speak the words of God, do you take that seriously? If you're a small group leader in this church, do you prepare? Do you take that seriously? Or do you just show up and read the material? If you work in our kids ministry and we trust you with the shaping of those young minds in there, right? They're picking up on stuff. They're learning stuff. We watched Raiders of the Lost Ark last night with Beck, and he was criticizing the movie the whole time. He's like, they're not Levites. They can't touch that ark. Like, what are they doing? Like, that's not where the ark was. That's not what. And so it was good. I mean, I appreciate your work. These kids are learning from you. They're learning all these things. But do you take it seriously? Do you prepare? I don't know if you know this or not, but Carla and Audra and Megan and Myra are putting in hours and hours and hours every week to write material to make it as easy as possible on you to teach those classes, not so you can be lazy, but so that our new teachers who are coming along have that extra help, so that they can do a good job even if they don't have years of experience. They do that. Do you put effort into the responsibility that you have to teach those kids? Are you putting effort into that? Or are you walking in and picking up material and saying, what are we talking about today? And here's what's funny. I edit all the material, so I put little things in there to tell me whether somebody's actually read the lesson or not. And I can tell most of the time whether you're actually read this or whether you're just winging it. Because I put stuff in there that you're going to notice or you're going to comment on or you're going to do differently just to see if you're paying attention. You will be held accountable for how you teach those kids. You will be held accountable for how much effort you put into it. If you're a teacher in this church, understand, you should not do this job if you're not going to take it seriously, because you will be held to account. That's the teachers. Everybody else, there are jobs that you didn't sign up for. There are jobs that you did sign up for, and maybe you didn't realize what that was going to do. It's going to make you a teacher. It's going to make you a leader, but you will be held accountable. So pay attention to your actions, but specifically, let's pay attention to our words. Now, if I say to you, I don't want you to sin with your words, what a lot of us go to is cussing, right? Don't cuss. Just hear me. There is no point in this sermon where I'm going to advocate for the dropping of F-bombs, right? That's not what I'm going for here. But what I want you to know is that cussing, for whatever reason, is the thing that we build a mantle around. It's the thing that we build a hearth around, right? No cussing, can't cuss, never going to do this. But there are things in the Bible that will tell you, hey, like, don't use coarse language and don't use obscene talk and things like that. But if you want to give me a list of words I'm not allowed to say, you got to use something under the Bible other than the Bible to come up with it, right? I'm not advocating for cussing, but I'm saying if you are, your concern when it comes to sins of the mouth are cuss words, you're worried about the wrong thing. You're worried about the wrong thing. Don't cuss, whatever. That's not what I'm concerned about. But it's like you're over here worried about the candle sitting on your counter. You're saying to the kids, don't say that word, don't say this word. Meanwhile, you have all other kinds of sins of the mouth coming out the chimney that are setting your house on fire. And you're over here worried about the candle on the counter. I can't believe they said that word. I'm not going to watch that movie with that word in it. I'm not going to do this. You can't be around people that do that. You know, all these things. Okay, make your decisions. Do what you want to do. Meanwhile, your house is on fire because you're a gossip. When we look at the sins of the mouth, like, okay, there's a couple of verses we can put together to talk about cuss words. Again, not advocating for it, but I'm saying it's the smaller of the issues. But there's a whole lot of other things that we can talk about, sins of the mouth, that are far more destructive than the things that we're most worried about. I'm just got a list of some of the sins of the mouth for us to talk about today. Lying. You say you'll do something and you don't do it. You say something's true and it's not true. Sin of the mouth. Oh, you're like, yeah, don't lie, of course. Okay. Gossip. talking to somebody else about something you should be talking to somebody else about. You're mad at somebody else. You got person A, you're person A. You're mad at person B. And instead of talking to person B, you're talking to person C. You're just skipping right over this. And instead of addressing the problem with person B, you're talking to person C and person D and person E. We could go on for like 26 more letters. You're talking to all these other people instead of dealing with the person you need to deal with, gossip. Or person A has a problem, and person B has a problem with each other, and person C and person D are over here having a good time talking about it. Hate that. Don't do that. The reason I don't hang out with a lot of preachers is because preachers are huge gossips about each other. I don't like it. Don't want to be a part of it. Work out your problems. But then there's slander, which is gossip with a little bit of meanness on it, right? That is, you're talking about something somebody else did, you're talking about a problem you have with somebody else, but instead of telling the truth about it, you're twisting it. You're making it just a little bit worse. Because here's what happens is you're in the situation, you're mad at somebody else, it feels worse to you than the words can actually express. Sure. It feels worse to you than the words can actually express. And when you tell the story, it doesn't sound like as big of a deal as you know it is. Thank you. So instead, what you do is you just plus it a little bit. You amp it up a little bit to make other people as mad as you are. It's slander. I hate that even worse than regular gossip. Regular gossip, at least you're telling the truth about what happened. But slander, you're lying about somebody else. Boasting. You're just bragging about stuff all the time. Constantly bragging about stuff all the time. We had this problem at camp a couple of weeks ago. This guy, got to be in his early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. Big guy, like 6 inches taller than me. Big guy. But this guy could not let anybody else tell a story without telling a story that was better than theirs. And it didn't matter how much he had to lie or how obvious the lie was. He was going to tell another story. You don't know how many friends that guy had by the end of the week? None. Including me. None. Sin of the mouth. It divides relationships, destroys that. Quarreling. It's just people that just fight all the time. People that just upset, that are ready to get mad at all times. Constantly over dumb stuff. Fighting and bickering over people. Having problems with people all the time. It's like, this is the third time you've been in my office this month. We're having a fight with somebody else. It seems like you might be the problem. Grumbling or quarreling. Grumbling. People that just complain all the time about everything. Doesn't matter if they asked for it. They can ask for the thing and still gripe about it. Grumbling about everything. I have this problem. This is me. I'm a complainer. And I had a mean old lady pointed out to me one time, and she was really mean, and it was unnecessary, but I got it. And I'm working on it, okay? Grumbling and complaining about everything all the time. And then people that make foolish promises say, sure, I'll do that, but I'm not going to bother to look at my calendar. I'm not going to bother to see if I have other commitments. I'm not going to bother to see if this is actually going to work out. They commit and they commit and they commit and they never follow through. They make foolish promises. You say, well, these things don't sound like that big of a deal. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Except every one of these can break relationships. And if we go through this church over the past 5 years, 6 years, that's how long I've been here. Let's just talk the last 6 years. And we talk about the category of sin that has caused us the most problems in this church. It's not been false teaching. We've not had a couple of things, but it's not been false teaching mostly. That's been a very minor thing. It's not been sexual sins causing us the problems. It's not been two deacons having fisticuffs in the parking lot. That's not what it's been. If we look at the things that has caused us the most problems and the most division in this church, it have been these sins right here. These are the sins that'll kill a church. These are the sins that break relationships. Two guys get in a fight, one punches the other one in the face, the other one pushes him, and they roll around on the ground. They can get over that. They can get over that. Absolutely get over that. People get over affairs. People get over theft. But do you know what never goes away? Those words that you say. They never go away, and they're a splinter that gets infected and that festers. They're embers that land on the roof, that go up into the attic, and they set the house on fire. Let's say this. Two people in church get upset with each other. And one is actually really more upset than the other one. The other one doesn't really even know what's going on, but they know there's a problem. And so the first person is talking to everybody else about the problem, blowing it out of proportion, making it a bigger deal than it actually is. Meanwhile, the second person's like, I don't even know what's going on. And then one day, the Holy Spirit leads the second person to just reach out to the first person and say, hey, I don't know what's going on between us, but happy to talk about it. I'm praying for you. I hope everything's going well. And then the first person, instead of responding back in kind and accepting the olive branch, trying to fix it, takes a screenshot of that message to text it to somebody else to say something snarky about the person that tried to make things right. Except they did that thing where instead of texting that screenshot to the person they want to gossip with, they text it to the person that texted them in the first place. And then they're so embarrassed that they leave the church and never come back and have to talk about how bad we are to come up with a reason to justify leaving. Or you get people that are upset and one person starts to gossip about the other person, they slander and they blow it out of proportion and they make it a much bigger deal than it is. It's because it feels good and they're talking to everybody else about it. And then one day they get over it. But they're too embarrassed to go back to all these people out here in the circle they talk to and say, you know what, I exaggerated that. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. So they just pretend it didn't happen. And now all these people dislike this person over here who didn't actually do anything. These things destroy. And you think they're not that big a deal. Hey kids, don't cuss. Don't cuss. Don't say that word. You can't say that word. Now let me get back to my conversation where I'm gossiping about somebody else in church. Don't cuss. Don't say that word. Yeah, sure, I'll be there. I absolutely think I can make it happen. Yeah, definitely going to be there. I'm not going to be there for that. We don't even hang phones up like that anymore. I don't know what I'm doing. It was a deep cut. We get these sins of the mouth that we don't even protect against. We got a wall built around the wood stove to make sure that we never do that. We've got protections in place to make sure we do that. We got the fire extinguisher right next to it in case something happens with that. Meanwhile, it's a cold night and there are embers going out the chimney and it's going to set the roof on fire because you won't shut your mouth. This is what he says in verse 3. He says, if we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. He's like, your tongue is not that big a deal. You don't think it's that big a deal. Nobody even sees it. It's just this little thing in your mouth. It's not that big of a deal. But small things have a big impact. The bit of a horse, it's not even the thing that you see. It's not even the biggest piece. It's just that little bar. And it lays across the horse's tongue. But the reins don't do anything unless the horse wants to cooperate. It's the bit that directs where you're going to go. It's that small piece that determines the course of that horse. And the same with the ship, you don't even see the rudder. It's underneath the water. It's hidden. It's not something you think about. You're thinking about the sails. You're thinking about the deck. You're thinking about the ship. You're thinking about the cannons because this is a pirate ship. You're thinking about all these things. Meanwhile, the thing that is determining the course of that ship is the rudder that you never even think about. And there are things that are being determined in your life by the way that you talk, by the way that you gripe, the way that you complain, the way that you're passive aggressive, the way that you look at the leaders in this church and you think you could do a better job than them, so you're passive aggressive about it and you make little comments to show everybody else how much better you would do at it. And it tears them down and makes you look bad, or because you get your feelings hurt and are too big of a baby to go and talk to the person you're upset about. And so instead of doing that, you talk to a bunch of other people and destroy the church. And you say it's not that big a deal. But it is determining the course of your life. It is determining your reputation, and it's determining what you're going to be judged on when you stand before God. It's not that big a deal. It's girl talk. It's not that big a deal. We're just chatting. It's not that big a deal. It's a prayer request. It's not that big a deal. And you'll be surprised when Jesus' words, Jesus' instructions, that you will be judged on every idle word you speak. When that's quoted in a list of the gossip, a list of the complaining, a list of the passive aggressiveness, a list of the boasting, a list of the words that you said, this is a scroll, sorry, all the words that you said that you thought weren't that big of a deal, but that ripped apart relationships and sowed seeds of division in the church and caused other people to want to quit what they were doing because of the way that you talked, you will be held accountable for that. And the more influence you have in the room, the more strictly you will be judged for it. Verse 6, the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. The idea that this is not a big deal, that it's not going to cause that many problems, that it's okay for you to just vent to somebody else about this, that you're just able to gossip and pretend that it's healthy, that you're able to complain and pretend that you're just expressing your feelings, that you're able to do this, is a lie from Satan that sets your tongue on fire to burn everything else down. And you think it's not a big deal. But it is. Verse 7. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. Go on to verse 10. For from the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not be so. Does a spring pour forth the same opening, both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water. Go back to the previous slide, Clayton. He says, look, this is something that you can do a little bit about, but if you've got this problem, it's not just a you fix it problem, there's a heart problem, and God has to be the one to fix this. You have a heart problem that needs to be dealt with. The things that you're saying are not just isolated. They're not just things that you came up with, but they're responses to what's going on inside of you. Like you're boasting, you're bragging about stuff, you're driving everybody away by always having to have the best story. It's because you're really insecure. And you're trying to make everybody think better about you because of it. The gossip, the slander, it's because you're hurt. And the outpouring of your heart is to try to tear them down to make yourself feel better. But all of these heart conditions, all of these hurts, these insecurities that lead to you sinning these sins are your problem that God needs to deal with inside you. You've got to learn to find your security not in what everybody else thinks about you, but what God says and what God says about you. And you got to have a heart change to do that. Your hurt, you have to have some healing from that hurt that's going to come from God in obedience to Him, and that's got to change there. Like I want you to work on your gossip. I want you to work on slander. I want you to work on bragging. I want you to work on being passive aggressive or complaining. I want you to work on those things. And maybe for you, it's just a once in a while thing. It's not a long-term problem. It's just a thing that you're doing, and you just need to have your mouth washed out with soap, and you'll be good, right? But if this is your thing, this is you all the time, this is not something you're going to fix on your own. This is the thing that you have to go to God with and say, look, God, I am broken, and I'm I don't like who I am. I don't like what I do. I don't like the way I talk. I don't know what it is about me that's leading me to this, but I need you to change me. I need you to fix me. He says this, you bless God the Father and you curse other people who are made in the likeness of God. That doesn't work. The same, you can't do that. You cannot with the same mouth worship God and tear down other people. Either you're going to worship God and build up other people, or you're going to tear down other people, and all the words that you say that are worship, they're just words. They're just lyrics on a screen. They don't count as worship. Because if you're using something to tear down other people and then turning around and worshiping God with it, God's not going to accept that. I don't care how far you reach and how high you get on your tippy toes and how loud you sing, you're not going to be able to worship if your heart is leading you to just tear down other people and use your words to try to burn the house down. He says this in verse 10. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening, both fresh and salt water? You can't worship and tear other people down. You got to pick one. So which one are you doing? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? No. You will be held accountable for what you do and what you say. You will be held accountable in proportion to your influence and authority in the room. And if you're hearing this and you're like, man, I got a problem, and I'm worried about this encounter with God because the way that I've been talking to people and the way that I've been dealing with things and the seeds of destruction that I've sown, the fire that I've put on my roof is a problem, and I need to deal with this. I'm very grateful that you're at that point. I'm super happy that you feel uncomfortable and a little bit miserable right now. I'm really grateful for that. But here's what you need to do. First, you need a heart change. This does not start with your actions or your efforts or a self-help book. This starts with you on your knees, broken before God, asking for change. Like, if this is a once-in-a-while thing, like, maybe you can fix it on your own. But if your pet sin, the sin that you keep in your room, and the sin that you keep in your house, and that you feed, and that you water, and that you play with, this is your pet sin, you're not fixing it on your own. You need to be broken on your knees before God with heart change. Second, you need accountability. You need accountability. There's a reason that Jesus didn't say, okay, you're saved, go live in the world and do whatever you want to. Go be by yourself until I get back, just wait. But instead, he gave you a group of people. And I know that this has been twisted into something that church is about listening to the pastor. I appreciate you listening to the pastor. Makes my job a whole lot easier. Appreciate you paying attention during the sermon. I don't mind the babies. We give them a little bit of an excuse. But this is not what this is about. It's not about this. It's about this. I can't do this. There we go. I didn't know I couldn't do that. It's about you stirring one another up to love and good works. It's about having relationships, having friendships that will allow you to speak into somebody else's life, to be trusted by them, not to make them feel ashamed, not to shame them, although you may be ashamed when you get called out on your sin. But to say, hey, I love you. Why did you say that? I love you. You're not going to talk like that around me. We're not going to talk about, you want to pray for them? We'll pray for them, but we're not going to do this nonsense. To hold each other accountable. To do better by holding each other accountable. And we want to help you with that. Evitt talks all, and some of y'all call him Tyler. I can't. I got to call him Evitt. We're doing this thing in the fall, which we've been doing for a few years, but we're going to kick it back off again, of these groups that get together for the purpose of helping each other be accountable, helping disciple each other. They're called discipleship groups. We're going to be doing this. And the purpose of these groups is not to get together and cry every week. That's not what this is for. And it's not that we expect you to get in these groups and immediately be like, hey, I'm going to tell you my deepest, darkest secrets and everything. But that you start spending the kind of time together that will get you to the point that somebody can walk alongside you and say, hey, dude, what are you doing? Hey, man, what's going on? I don't know what women say to each other, like, hey, man, hey, dude. Just insert that. Well, sister, I don't know. Stop talking. You need that. Jesus gave you church. He gave you a church. He created the concept of churches for accountability and for help to push each other to go further. And if you've got this problem, you need heart change, but you need help. So find a couple of people that you like, find a couple of people that you trust, and hang out with them. Go to coffee with them, go to lunch with them, invite them to your house, get to know them, and then say, hey, I would like help with this. If you catch me talking about this, I give you permission to say something. Hold each other accountable. Finally, you need gratitude. The antidote for this is worship. Because if you're focused on the goodness of God and all the things that God has done for you and the mercy of God and how loving people the way that you're loved, and you're focused on worshiping God, then you're not going to be able to tear other people down. You're not going to be able to sow these seeds of destruction. If you're focused on worshiping God, you're focused on gratitude toward God, you're focused on these things. Because a salt spring is not going to produce fresh water. And a grapevine is not going to produce figs. And if your life is centered on worship, then you'll be able to forgive. If your life, because you know you were forgiven. And if your life is centered on worship, you'll be able to let it go because you know what He let go for you. And if your life is centered on worship, then you're not going to be obsessed with everybody else's business. But you're going to be focused on yours with Him because you know you're not enough. You're not getting it done. You don't have time for everybody else. Ask for heart change. Get some accountability. Focus on gratitude. And shut your mouth. We build these protections against all these sins that we think are the bad sins. We build these protections against all these things that we think are the things that are going to burn our house down. Meanwhile, we've got these sins throwing out sparks, throwing out embers, right onto a rotten, dry roof. And you're going to look up one day and find yourself alone. Find yourself broken. Find yourself having lost all the people that you had around you. And looking back and seeing a wake of destruction behind you. Because you were worried about the big sins. And not the one that sets an entire forest ablaze, much less your own house. James warns us about our speech for 3 different reasons. He says, first, you're going to be held accountable. And you need to know that you're going to be held accountable for your actions, but you're going to be held accountable for your words. And the more influence you have in the room, the more you'll be held to account. Whether that's an official position, if it's parenting, if it's just being the person that's followed Jesus the longest in the room. Like one of the things that we deal with, we look around and we see, that Evan and I talk about, the deacons and I talk about, we look and see who's in each other's circle. And sometimes we get concerned because like, hey, there's a circle over there and it's a few new believers and a gossip. And the person with the most influence in that room, we're kind of worried about because that person is not a good influence on everybody else. But that person may not have signed up for a job, but because they have the most influence, they're the furthest along. They're the most mature Christian in the room. They're going to be held to account, and James warns you about that. The second thing that he warns you about your speech is because it's dangerous. So you don't care about the sin. You don't care about the judgment. Can you care about your house? Can you care about your life and your relationships? Because it will destroy them. And the third reason he warns you about your speech is because it's impacting your relationship with him. You cannot worship and be doing this. You cannot worship and be destroying other people. You cannot worship and be tearing other people down. You cannot worship and be sowing seeds of destruction in this church. And it's affecting your relationship with Him. So I don't care which reason you need to get a hold of it. I don't care if judgment's the thing that's going to do it for you, if burning your own house down is the thing that's going to do it for you, your relationship with God is going to I don't care which one does it. James gave you 3. Pick one and fix it. I don't decide what to preach. I kind of do. Like I pick out a book or I pick out a series. But you know how I do this. It's been long enough. I pick a book and I go through it. And today says on the calendar, it's James chapter 3, verses 1 through 12. I think is what it is. And so if you're looking at me and you're like, I can't believe he's saying that to me. After what happened this week, I can't believe he's saying that to me. Or after what I've done, I can't believe he's saying that to me. I can't believe he's calling me out like that. It ain't me. It's not me. If you're feeling convicted, if you're feeling mad, if you're feeling hurt, if you're feeling attacked, it's God that's doing it, not me. I'm just trying to tell you what He said. And that should be way more serious for you than me doing it. Because what that means is that God loves you enough to arrange for you to be here at this time, at this place, for us to be covering this passage at this time, and for me to tell you what He wants you to hear right now. He loves you, and He wants this addressed. But He's not forcing you into anything. You decide. Will you come to Him with brokenness and ask for a new heart? Will you start the steps of making some friends that you can trust to hold you accountable? Will you put some effort into gratitude and worship? Or are you just going to keep doing what you're doing? One path leads to healing and restoration. The other path leads to you and me sitting down in my office as we look back on the path of destruction that you wrought and you leaving and blaming me for it. You get to decide which path you're on. I know which path I want for you, but you get to decide what to do. So what will you do? Will you hear what God's trying to say to you today? Will you plug your ears? Say, it's not about me. Stand with me, please. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you right now, and I'm so grateful, Lord, and I feel I have my own conviction to deal with here, Lord, about my words, about how I talk, about some of the things that I say and the way I say them. I feel that desire to complain, that desire to grumble. I feel it, Lord. And I ask that you would help, that you would give me a heart of gratitude that doesn't complain, but that is grateful for the opportunities that I've been given. And Lord, I ask that you would just ratchet up the conviction in the room, Lord. I know that you love us enough to want to fix things, and so if there are people in the room that are feeling convicted, I ask that you just turn the screws a little bit more. That you would make them uncomfortable, that you would make them aware, that you would make it really clear what it is they need to do, and they would take the steps to do it. I ask that we would be a church that protects against the big sins, against the sexual sin, against theft, against whatever. But that we would watch this sin on the roof, that we would protect against it, that we would love each other enough to hold each other accountable, and that we would guard against this, Lord. I thank you, and it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.